Today I want to talk about Christian identity. That is, how we view ourselves in light of the Scripture and in light of our relationship to God. How do you view yourself in relationship to God and in relationship to other believers? Do you understand yourself as part of something called the church? If so, what is the church's relationship to the nation of Israel? That is, the Jewish people. In most theological circles today, Christian theological circles today, you would find the definition of the church being Jews and Gentiles together as one body. In fact, we find that sort of language in the book of Ephesians. Let's take a look at the book of Ephesians, the epistle written by Paul to the Ephesians, to understand ourselves and our relationship with other believers and our relationship to the nation of Israel. One verse we can start with is Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 17. It says, "So this I say and affirm together with the Lord, that you walk no longer just as the Gentiles also walk, in the futility of their mind, being darkened in their understanding, excluded from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, because of the hardness of their heart." Paul is obviously speaking to Gentile believers, and he is saying that they no longer walk as the Gentiles walk. The word walk here would be referring to the way you live out your faith, the way you live out your life. So if Gentile believers are not to walk as Gentiles walk, then who are they supposed to walk like? Well, surely Paul is referring to Jesus. But who is Jesus? Jesus is the Jewish Messiah. So really, what Paul is saying here is that Gentile believers are no longer to live the way normal pagan Gentiles live, but are to imitate the Jewish Messiah, are to imitate the Jewish people insofar as the Jewish people are obedient to God's commandments. He says that Gentiles were excluded from the life of God. We were excluded from the life of God, but that reminds me of just a couple chapters earlier in Ephesians chapter 2. Paul, referring to Gentiles, said that we were separate from the Messiah, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise. We had no hope and we were without God in the world. So that actually makes sense. Gentiles have no inherent relationship to a Messiah. They have no connection to the people of Israel. They have no connection to the covenants God made with the people of Israel, and therefore have no hope and have no God. You have to remember, this is a time when there was really only two religious options in the world, in speaking in broad terms, of course. But on the one hand, Judaism and the one true God, and on the other hand, paganism and multitudes of false gods. So, with that dichotomy in mind, he's saying that Gentiles who were on this side, on the pagan side, had no hope, no God, and they had no relationship to the true God because they were separate from the Messiah, they were excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, and they were strangers to the covenants of the promise. But in verse 13 of Ephesians 2, Paul says that, "But now in Messiah Jesus, you who formerly were far off have been brought near by the blood of the Messiah." So by the blood of the Messiah, Gentiles have been taken from this side and brought to this side where the Jewish people are, because the Jewish people have a relationship to God. They have the covenants God made with them. They have the promise of the Messiah. So when Paul said in chapter 4 that we were excluded from the life of God, he's saying that we were excluded from the commonwealth of Israel. We were strangers to the covenants of the promise. What does this mean? This means that Gentiles need to in some way be connected to the Jewish people and to the covenants God made with the Jewish people. So how do we become connected to the Jewish people and to the covenants God made with the Jewish people? Through the Messiah. All people, Jews and Gentiles alike, are sinners. So the death of the Messiah allows us all to come into relationship with God. But there's a context to that relationship. Contrary to what many people think, Jesus and the apostles did not come to start a new religion. They did not come to start a new way of having a relationship with God. No, Jesus came to realize what had always been promised to the Jewish people. The faithful in the Hebrew Scriptures saw ahead and took hold of those promises by faith. Much in the same way that We aren't living in the time of Jesus. Jesus isn't here right now. So we're not living 2,000 years ago when he was here the first time, and we're not yet living in the Messianic era. So we too take hold of it by faith. So my point is that there's a context. That original context that we read about in the Hebrew Scriptures is the same context that the Gentile believers came into. They were excluded from the Commonwealth of Israel, but now included in the Commonwealth of Israel. It doesn't make us Jewish. Much of the apostolic writings, particularly Acts 15 and the Epistle to the Galatians, makes it clear that Gentiles do not have to become Jewish when they become believers. But we certainly are connected now with the Jewish people. Our God is now the God of Israel. Our scriptures are now the scriptures of Israel. Our religion should be the religion of Israel. So to me, that's why it's a shame that so many Christians understand themselves as being a separate entity, distinct from the people of Israel, distinct from the Jewish people. Really, we should be understanding ourselves as those called from the nations who come alongside the people of Israel. We haven't formed a new religion. We haven't formed a new group. We are now spiritually connected with the Jewish people, particularly those Jewish people who live by faith and who accept the Messiah. Indeed, it says in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 6, that, referring to this mystery that has now been revealed, the Gentiles are fellow heirs and fellow members of the body and fellow partakers of the promise in the Messiah Jesus. I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible, but the NIV gives a helpful a paraphrase by saying that the Gentiles are members together with Israel. Why? Because the context that we've been brought into is the context of the people of Israel. It is the Commonwealth of Israel. We are now connected to and no longer strangers to the covenants that God has made with the people of Israel. So when we imagine ourselves, when we think of ourselves in relationship to other believers, in relationship to the Bible, in relationship to God, we have to think of ourselves as coming into the larger context of the people of Israel, the Jewish people. And what that means is that Judaism is now certainly no longer a distinct foreign religion. It is just as much a part of our heritage as Christianity is. This should inform so many areas of our theology and practice. Rather than having a negative view towards the Torah, we should understand that the Torah is God's gift to the Jewish people, and that we Gentile believers get to join in on obeying the Torah along with the Jewish people. Rather than thinking that the Sabbath and Passover and Pentecost, Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Booths, all of these holidays, rather than thinking that they are abolished or irrelevant, we should see that they are part of our history. They're part of the history of Jesus and the apostles. These holidays had relevance to Jesus and the apostles, so they should have relevance to us. Anyway, I can go on and on, but I just wanted to share with you in this video that Gentile believers, Christians, Christianity, however you want to think of it, we are certainly not disconnected from the people of Israel, from the Jewish people, nor are we disconnected from the religion of Judaism. And I'm basing that on the words of Paul in his letter to the Ephesians. For more videos, click on the subscribe link below or visit youtube.com/MessianicNiagara. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/MessianicNiagara. You can follow us on Twitter at MessianicNiag. Email us, contact@MessianicNiagara.com, and visit MessianicNiagara.com. If you'd like to support us, you can click on the donate link, and we'd appreciate any amount you can send us. Supporting us financially will enable us to continue to offer free content on the website. Thanks for all your support.